But let's get into this discussion with Bree and Amy Villela. So I do want to say before I get into this, I am very familiar with Amy. She ran for Congress in 2018. So she was a part of that group, Paula Jean Swearengin, Cori Bush, AOC. She was a part of that group. She was on Knocking Down the House. If you haven't seen that documentary, she talked about her story. I do want to say I am very empathetic with Amy's story. What happened with Amy is it's really messed up, but it really just shows you just how corrupt this healthcare system is in this country. So for people who do not know, Amy's daughter died because she didn't have health insurance, long story short. And it's sad. It's really sad, but it happens, right? Now, I'm very empathetic with her story, but the discussion that takes place here is about what are new progressive candidates going to do differently than the squad when they get into DC? So let's go ahead and get into this discussion because I think that Bree really brought up some good points here. Let's go in.
So when you say, you want to force people to reckon with this and force electeds who would give lip service to this stuff and, on paper support the Medicare for All bill, you want to, force them into a more active position. Does that mean something like, the force the vote moment where you'd say potentially withhold your vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House if that were to come up or something similar to what were to come up, or withhold your vote for some other piece of meaningful must-pass legislation, the way that some people were advocating that squad members withhold their vote for the COVID relief bill until $15 minimum wage was included in the bill. Is that—
Hold on one second. I'm letting the video catch up.
That the kind of strategy that you think you'd be comfortable with as an elected? Because I think absent those sorts of opportunities, it's been a struggle, I think, for other very well-intentioned electeds like Cori Bush to really make their policy preferences known or do anything about them, despite feeling very passionately about them and being very—
Hold on, guys. This is like freezing and it's stuttering a little bit in type VNC.
very committed to them.
Okay.
Right.
So that was the question. Okay. So Bree's explaining, what the squad members have done, and she wants to know what is Amy going to do differently. Right. And so at the beginning of this conversation, she mentioned if you support these issues, and she said on paper, and I think that's important that she said that because a lot of candidates support the issues when they're running on paper, but then they win and they get into DC and they don't fight for those issues. So force the vote was really an exposing moment, right? And other legislation that they passed on. So I'm glad that she mentioned that. Now I want you, again, what are you going to do differently? Listen to Amy's response.
We talk about that, there needs to be, first of all, the more that we get in, the more power you have. And I'm not saying that's the only answer. That's one of the steps. The other step is also we need to start being better at strategizing. If you're wanting to do something like force vote, I think there needs to be a lot of strategy and talking behind it. And I think the quickness of that decision was, pretty hard to strategize through.
I don't think so. Let's go back here just for a second, because I'm going to chime in for just a second.
One of the steps. The other step is also we need to start being better at strategizing. If you're wanting to do something like force—
Sorry. I'm all over
or
the
do
place
anything
tonight,
about them, despite feeling
Okay.
very passionately about them and being very committed to them.
Right. When we talk about that, there needs to be, first of all, the more that we get in, the more power you have. And I'm not saying that.
Let's talk about that. Because this is a comment I've heard a lot of people say, that we need to increase the numbers, right? The more we get in, the more power that we have. I'm about to debunk that. Here's the problem. I actually don't agree with that. Because first of all, you have a set of progressives that are there now, right? You have members of the squad and other people who consider themselves to be progressive, like Rokana and Pramila Jayapal, whatevs. You already have a set there. Now, for the past couple of years, we have watched them vote along with corporate Democrats. We have watched them go along with corporate Democrats. So the new progressive candidates that are coming into DC, coming into the House, they have two options. They're either going to fight and hold the line, which is what the squad was supposed to do, or they're going to do what's easier and they're going to cave and go along with the corporate Democrats, just like the squad has done. Now, having said that, the fact that the squad has been going along with corporate Democrats for the past couple of years, they've been voting with them on legislation where they could have held the line. I do not believe that the squad all of a sudden is going to change the way that they have been behaving and go along with the new progressives and fight. Now, some may come back to me and say, well, where's your proof? What evidence do you have? What makes you believe that? Well, most recently, them choosing not to support Nina Turner. Because what they just showed us, when they are threatened, they will cave. If they won't do something as simple as that, as even endorsing Nina Turner or saying, hey, I support Nina Turner. If they can't do that, do I believe that they are going to say, oh, we got more progressives in here now. Now we're going to fight? Hell to the no. Because they know that they will be threatened again. And if those threats didn't mean much to them, they wouldn't have caved. If it didn't mean much to them to lose committee assignments or to have the Democratic Party primary challenge them to beat them, or have the Democratic Party threaten to throw in all this big money so that they'll lose their primaries, if that bothered them to the point where they could not say, man, I support Nina Turner, I'm going to stand by her because she stood by me and I think she is the better candidate. If they cave to that, I do not believe that there is any way in hell that they are all of a sudden going to say, we have new, more progressives now, I'm going to start fighting with them. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So when people keep telling me, and I hear a lot of people saying that we need to increase the numbers, and then they're going to go ahead and start fighting, let's not count the squad as a part of those numbers. So the new progressives that are coming in, they're going to be on their own, or they're going to have to go along with corporate Democrats to fit in. Those are the choices. Those are the options. Mark my words. Let's see. Let's see. But I'm willing to bet they are not all of a sudden going to decide to start fighting. And I have another example that I can point to. Cori Bush. When Max Blumenthal interviewed Cori Bush and he asked her, why didn't you force the vote? Cori Bush's response was, that's Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. So that right there tells me that because it's not her bill, she's not going to fight for it. So why do we think that if they get more numbers and more people, all of a sudden they're going to change what they've been doing for the past couple years? They're not going to. We got to realize the fact that AOC's been there since what? She won in 2018. She's been there a couple years now. They know that if they start fighting, that the Democratic Party is going to do everything that they can to push them out. They'll be gone. And they don't want that. Now let's go back into the video.
That's the only answer. That's one of the steps. The other step is also we need to start being better at strategizing. If you're wanting to do something like force vote, I think there needs to be a lot of strategy and talking behind it. And I think the quickness of that decision was, pretty hard to strategize through. But
no. I no. Okay, so yes, it happened rather quickly, but I just told you what Cori Bush said to Max Blumenthal. She told him that's Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal's bill. So even if Force the Vote had been playing months and months before and they were notified about it, Cori Bush just let you know that because it was not her bill, she was not going to fight for it. Let's not use the excuse that Force the Vote happened so quickly and that's why they decided not to do it. They didn't do it because they wanted to protect their careers, because they wanted to keep their seats. And they knew that if they went against Nancy Pelosi, that the Democratic Party would do everything that they could to push them out. Let's go back in.
I am definitely for holding the line. I bring this up a lot. You know, I'm running against a complacent status quo corporate politician who just shows up to vote and is not out there fighting. And when I talk about fighting, I'm talking about holding the line. Republicans are very good at this. They'll come in and make their demands. They won't pass stuff. They will get what they want. They're very good at it. And I was very pleased to see with the Build Back Better that the progressives as a whole actually held the line. We need to do more of that. Like, we're not going to give you this infrastructure bill that we know you want unless we get X, Y, and Z. We've not been able to get everything in X, Y, and Z that we wanted in the Build Back Better bill, but at least we could have gotten something if Democrats as a whole and the progressives, you know, as a whole, would have, you know, held their place. We could have forced a vote on this. We need to have more of that. So I am definitely in that mindset that, listen, I'm not going to Congress just to sign on to any old bill.
Two things. People keep bringing up the infrastructure bill, but to my understanding, I thought those two bills were supposed to go together. That's how they were supposed to hold the line. And the bills didn't end up going together. So did they really hold the line like that? I don't think they really did. The other thing that she just mentioned here, right here.
You know, as a whole, would have, you know, held their place. We could have forced a vote on this. We need to have more of that. So I am definitely in that mindset that, listen, I'm not going to Congress just to sign on to any old bill. I'm not selling out my soul just to appease everyone. I'm going there because I knew I made a promise that I would make a difference.
But the thing is, all of them said that. All of them said, like, no, I'm not going to go along with them. I'm going in there to fight. And what do? They vote with them. They sign on to the same bills that the corporate Democrats sign on to because they know what will happen if they don't. We've heard this before. That's the thing. We've heard this so many times.
It's a sacred promise to me. And I will go there to fight. This is not about seniority. I mean, if I was about, you know, prestige and stuff, I could just stay to CFO. This to me has been about a fight to make sure that we're going to get the legislation we need. That is difficult. I mean, I know it's difficult, and I'm not in Congress now, so I'm, you know, it's easier, I guess, to say from this side. But for me, this is very, very personal, and I know that's what I'd like to join and help solidify and push, you know, our members to actually stand united and start drawing our own lines.
So Senator Turner has said after her loss that progressive allies of hers that had endorsed her in her last race were threatened to not endorse her this time around. There's no specifics about what the threat was or who specifically she was talking about, but we know, for instance, that Cori Bush endorsed her last time. I saw Cori Bush at an event featuring Nina Turner and several other Black female candidates, offering her support, you know, helping, you know, encouraging the crowd to support the candidates. She was the only elected who showed up. And I remember appreciating that moment. And then I was confused when a few weeks later, the Progressive Caucus endorsed Shontel Brown, and we all know how that story went. Additionally, Progressive...
Which I predicted that, by the way. I predicted that they would support Shontel Brown. So it wasn't a surprise to me.
Progressive sees things like that happening. People, they see someone like Cori Bush, who obviously has a great deal of affection for and a commitment to the ideals that Nina Turner was running for, ultimately declined to speak out in that moment and talk and endorse her despite the Congressional Progressive Caucus's endorsement of her opponent. We see what happened with every progressive lining up and voting for this $40 billion in funding to Ukraine, with the only people objecting and calling attention to the fact that America always has money for war, but not for the poor, are these right-wing Republicans who...
And Tupac. Let's remember, because Tupac actually said that a long time ago. Money for war, but you can't feed the poor.
I have no interest in giving any credit or applauding, but at the end of the day, are outflanking our best progressives in the House on issues relating to anti-interventionism. And, you know, you see the kind of pattern emerging among progressives where when they're tough votes where they actually need progressives to pass legislation like Iron Dome funding, there seems to be a kind of rotating villain of the left that's happening where, okay, this 3 takes the hit this time and does the bad vote, and then another 3 takes the hit next time and does the bad vote. And at the...
It's all coordinated. It's all coordinated. And I've noticed it because every time I've seen them pass these legislations, every time I look up to see who voted which way, so you can see who's who. And Bree's right. That's what they do. They rotate amongst each other. Sometimes it's Jamal Bowman. Sometimes it's AOC. Sometimes it's Rashida Tlaib. That's what they do. So you can't try to put it on all on one person. I believe that's a coordinated effort. I really do.
At the end of the day, from the outside at least, and I would love to talk to any of those progressives if they're willing to come on the show and explain these votes and these behaviors. From the outside, it really undermines confidence of the voter, of the progressive voter. Because it feels like at the end of the day, even though maybe 75% of your votes are good or 90% of your votes are good, they will always figure out, the establishment always figures out how to squeeze just enough blood from the stone to get what they want. And ultimately, they'll get Shontel Brown in office. They'll get their Iron Dome funding. They'll get their $40 billion for Ukraine, which is more money than Russia's entire military budget. And the, you know, hyper-capitalist, militarist world where we have 500,000 homeless people, 68,000 people die of lack of health care every year, and stories like yours are created every day, keeps on trucking. And so what I'm pressing you on is not at all about your commitment. It's this fundamental question that people are pondering, which is commitment enough when we've now seen over the last 4 years a demonstration of how good the establishment is at undermining even those people that have the best values and the deepest personal commitments to their ideals.
Yes, and let's all remember, Nancy Pelosi was once a progressive. How'd that turn out?
Mm-hmm. You know, again, I can understand the frustration, and you know, when it comes down to electoral politics, you know, we're talking about, you know, a very small handful of people versus how many people are, you know, in Congress.
But I have to interrupt here because this is where everyone keeps saying, well, they're small numbers. There's not enough of them. They already have enough people there right now to actually push legislation through, to have some type of leverage, and they don't do it. They choose not to do it. That's on purpose. So what we have now in DC is we have a representation of progressive policies. We have the representation there, but we don't actually have the action. That's a problem. So you have all these people that can say they're progressive because they agree on the issues, but they don't vote that way. They're not fighting for them. All we have with them right now is representation. And I keep harping this because they keep bringing up the numbers. And I'm telling you, they already have the numbers right now to hold up legislation and prevent things from passing. And they're choosing not to do it.
To me, it's not either or, it's got to be both. We have to, like, I go back to this again, we have to increase the power of the people that are there in numbers and start gaining some of that power, have enough that if you vote away that, you will get, some pushback, blowback on, do you have enough votes to actually stop the legislation?
Well, yes, that's the whole.
Let me comment here and then I'll let Bree go on. Amy's saying that we need to increase the power that they have. Do they really have power per se? Now, when it comes to holding up legislation, yes, they could. But the Democratic Party controls all of it. This is the problem because, yes, you had progressives go into the House, but the Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi, and she takes corporate money, has no problem taking corporate money. This is what happens when you put a group of progressives into a party that is owned by Wall Street. All of this, I want you to think about this. The way that they vote, the decisions that they make in that house, it is all controlled by money. They don't pass any type of legislation that does not have corporate interest. And I've seen a lot of discussions about why they're not fighting. Why aren't they doing this? People are like, are they corrupt? Are they not corrupt? And there's one piece that a lot of people are leaving out, and that's the money. The Democratic Party is working exactly the way it is designed to work. All the corporations, all the people, all the big money. And I'll say this too. Justice Democrats should have been denounced the moment they took that money from George Soros. The moment they started taking billionaire money, this strategy was done. Now, tomorrow I'm doing a call-in show in the afternoon, and we're going to talk about a new strategy because this is not working. This is not working. Look at what they just did to Nina Turner. There's people in DC telling me that Cori Bush's office isn't even allowed to talk. So what power are you going to have, Amy, when you come in? What power are you going to have when they're stopping someone from speaking? I think we need to be real here. We need to be real. Anyone who does fight and try to push back on them, they're going to push them out. They'll primary challenge them. They'll call up AIPAC and say, throw in big money for their next campaign against them. They're already doing it now. Look at all the things they're doing to stop progressives in DC. And this is coming from the Democratic Party, the party that they joined. Hell, I could understand if it was the Republican Party doing this. This is coming from their own damn party, you guys. So you have people right now, you have the Democratic Party, they're trying to redraw the districts in New York City so that progressives will be put up against each other. So you may have Mondaire Jones and Jamal Bowman going up against each other. Well, only one can win. So that means that if only one can win, then only one will be going back to DC. Boop, you just lost a progressive seat. You see how this works? Why would you want to be in a party that is doing everything that they can to make you either compromise your values that you said you would fight for, or to push you out and prevent you from coming back? Why would you want to be a part of that party? Let's go back in.
The point that the squad members, because of the narrow margins in the House, could have stopped anything. They could have held up Biden's agenda as completely as Manchin and Sinema could have. Not in every instance, because there were some cases where Nancy got for some Republicans to cross the line. But for things that I would argue Republicans were very unlikely because of political blowback to vote for, like a Republican was not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker of the House.
Yep.
You know, I mean, if they did, I would love to see that happen and let that person then suffer the electoral consequences. And maybe that's an opportunity for a Democrat to get that seat, right? But you don't get those kind of opportunities unless you force people into those situations. So I guess my question to you is, you know, I understand that there is an argument that forced the vote happened too quickly. I can't really debate that. My impression from talking to folks that have heard from electeds is that they were caught off guard, but mostly because they decided to believe that it was coming from a source that they didn't like. And because they didn't like Jimmy Dore, they were suspicious of it and didn't act quickly enough and pay attention.
Let's talk about the Jimmy Dore phenomenon with Force the Vote. Now, I, like a lot of you, saw the Force the Vote town hall, and I want to remind everybody, Jimmy Dore was not the only person participating in Force the Vote. Briahna Joy Gray was a part of that. Savage Joy, who was just on here, she was a part of Force the Vote town hall. Cornell West was on there. Even Kyle Kalinske was on there. So everybody wants to point fingers at Jimmy Dore when it comes to Force the Vote, as if he was just by himself and there was nobody else on the left that wanted to do this same strategy. So I like to throw those names out there to remind people this was not just a Jimmy Dore thing. Let's go back in.
To it quickly enough because of their own bias about the messenger, which, feel how you want to feel about him. It's a little frustrating as someone who was part of that movement, along with Cornell West and Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske and Richard Wolff and any number of respected individuals, that our voices would be ignored. But let's just accept that happened too quickly. Next time around, you know, people want to know, what is your approach to dealing with Nancy Pelosi, who clearly has everybody over a barrel? Would you support her again as Speaker of the House?
You know, I've always said that my votes will never be free. And so I was asked this the other day on a talk show here locally in Las Vegas, you know, and not if she's not on board with what my agenda is. And so I cannot in good conscience vote for someone who is not going to be supported in pushing forward the whole reason why I'm in Congress, why I'm even in politics. And that is for healthcare and for Medicare for all. And so,
but I do want to add, because I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but Amy didn't support Force the Vote. And I know some people say, well, she wasn't in Congress at that time. Neither was Paula Jean Swearengin, and she supported it. You see what I'm saying? So she already showing you. She's already showing you. This is the thing.
You know, again, that's my place on it, and where I come from. You know, I have a lot of experiences that are very relevant, and one of the reasons why I think I really would be an added benefit in Congress. You know, I'm not just only a grieving mom. You know, I've also had the financial backing. I know how to speak to businesses. I think that's one way that we have not done well at, is communicating how Medicare for all would benefit small businesses and medium-sized businesses, right? Because a lot of people.
I disagree with that. Bernie talked about Medicare for all over and over and over and over again. So I don't know about that. This is the thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you know how to talk to small businesses. What matters is, are you going to fight for the people that put you in? Are you going to do what you said you're going to do? That's what matters. I don't care if you know how to talk to businesses, lawyers, other corporations. That is not important to me. What matters is, what are you going to do for the voter? And so we have to start doing something differently. And I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow. I think it is time that these politicians, they need to give something to us. They need to give something to us before we vote for them, not making promises to us and then saying they're going to do it, and then they get into DC and they don't do it. Because we've been playing that game for a long time. I think now we need to turn the tables a little bit here, and we need to put it in our favor. And we need to ask them, what are you going to do for my vote? Not what are you going to do after I vote for you? What are you going to do for me first? We need to start asking them to do something for us in order to get our vote. And we need to have it before we vote for them. I'd like to see that. And Case Study QB actually came up with the plan for that, how to link mutual aid and electoral politics. They need to do something for the people. What are you going to do for the people in your community? How are you going to help us? Because the voters do a lot. We do a lot, right? Some of you quit your job to canvass for these candidates, like Bernie Sanders. Nick was one of them. Some of you donated money to these candidates, right? I donated a lot of money. Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad, I donated a lot of money. So the voters, we already do a lot, right? Then you go vote for them. Some places you stand in line for what, 10 hours now? Hello, Atlanta. And then they win. They go to DC and they don't do anything. They become a standard corporate Democrat, just like the rest. So we need to start asking them to give us something. So I like that idea that Case Study QB has, like, no, you got to do something for our vote. Because I support Medicare for all. I support a Green New Deal. I support paid parental leave. That doesn't mean anything to me what you support, because when you get in, you already got my vote. You already got my money. You already got my time canvassing for you. Then you push us out. You don't need us anymore because you're already in.
People are persuaded by the moral high ground of it, right? They want to know about the dollars. So that's another thing we need to be doing. But I also bring, an active duty military spouse. My husband's currently serving, and I'm anti-war, anti-interventionist, 100% of the way. And when I talk about Ukraine, it's very scary to me that I hear people saying that we are already at war. These are people that have no skin in the game, do not comprehend what that means. We're not talking about another Afghanistan that is decentralized and is run by tribal elders. We are talking about a country that has nuclear weapons. And all it takes is one NATO person to get hurt, killed, and we can find ourselves in the midst of war. And I am not someone who's going to be pro anything military-industrial complex. So I understand the frustration.
But they all say that, Amy. That's the thing. They all say that.
And that's where I go back to, we need to have people with different types of experiences and pushing in Congress. I can't speak for other people who are in Congress right now, but that is how I plan to use my voice. And I think that's necessary. I don't know that we have any progressives that have any kind of military right now in Congress or have any skin in the game. And the minute that they go into talking anything against military, well, you're anti-military, anti-American. It'd be very hard to say that.
Well, they called Tulsi Gabbard a traitor.
Married to my husband for 13 years.
So I do just want to say here really quick in reference to what she's talking about having skin in the game. Here's the people who had skin in the game. Cynthia McKinney, Dennis Kucinich, Ralph Nader. Do you see them still in Congress? No. Something to think about.
Things happen.
Right. But
is that to say, do you disagree with the choice of all of these squad members? Every Democrat voted for this $40 billion to Ukraine. Would you have voted differently?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not in Congress right at the moment, but from the outset, I will not be someone who's voting for funding unnecessary foreign conflict that could lead us into World War III. And here's the thing: if we're going to be funding the military-industrial complex,
she kind of didn't answer the question. Bree asked her if she would have voted differently in reference to funding Ukraine, given that $40 billion to Ukraine. Pay close attention to what she says.
Not someone who's going to be pro anything military-industrial complex. So I understand the frustration.
She didn't ask what you're going to be doing in the future, though. She specifically asked, would you have voted differently? Amy responds to this question in a future tense.
And that's where I go back to, we need to have people with different types of experiences and pushing in Congress. I can't speak for other people who are in Congress right now, but that is how I plan to use my voice. And I think that's necessary. I don't know that we have any progressives that have any kind of military right now in Congress.
Sorry, I think I went back somehow.
These squad members, every Democrat voted for this $40 billion to Ukraine.
Okay.
Would you have voted differently?
Would you have voted differently?
I mean, I'm not in Congress right at the moment, but from the outset, I will not be someone who's voting for funding unnecessary foreign conflict that could lead us into World War III.
She's talking about the future. Bree asked you if you would have voted differently based on the 40 billion. But Amy responds in a future tense. It was just a yes or no. Like literally, like I don't understand the word salad. Like a lot of these candidates, they're doing this word salad. Like, dude, that's a yes or no. That's all you had to say.
Here's the thing. If we're going to be funding the military industrial complex, if they're going to force this, at the very least, what are you going to give back? And how are you, every dollar you spend, I want to spend on the American people. How about let's pay off some student debt? Let's pay off some Medicare for all. You want this? Let's talk. Let's communicate. But again, I think it takes like all of us bringing different elements and different experiences and lived experiences into Congress to help form a stronger, more cohesive, progressive unit. And that's what I hope I can bring into this. I feel very strongly about, my opinions on things, and it comes from my lived experience. And again, we all have a different frame of reference and a different lived experience. I mean, that's where I'm coming from.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think that part of why perhaps some progressives feel isolated.
Let's talk about the lived experience that Amy is mentioning here. Look, I will admit that most of the squad members did not have political experience. Ayanna Pressley did. She was my city councilor. First time she ran, and I voted for her. But there are other people who have gone in there that had similar experience like Amy has, and the Democratic Party eats them up and spits them out. They will not let them fight and push back. And the ones that did are gone. Cynthia McKinney told you on Monday when she came on my show, what did she say? That Maxine Waters told her, Cynthia, however, the leadership wants us, what they want us to do, that's what we do. That's how it works. Now, Cynthia McKinney was very outspoken in Congress. You see how they treated her, smeared her, tried to ruin her name. She decided to run with the Greens. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. We need to leave this corrupt party. We're trying to put people, it's like, if you're familiar with like fraternities and sororities, right? So fraternities and sororities, they pick who they want. So you have rush week, guys come out and go see the frat houses, girls go out and see the sorority houses, right? But at the end of the day, the sororities decide which girls they want to join their chapter. Now, at that point, you can say yes or no. You can decide not to. But they're the ones doing the picking, right? So we have these progressives going into a party that does not want them. So when they go to DC, they not only have to fight against the Republicans, which is a given, but they also have to fight against the corporate Democrats in their own damn party. They have to fight against two groups of people and try to survive. It's like joining a fraternity or a sorority or trying to be a part of a fraternity or sorority that has made it clear to you that they don't want you there. And you're still showing up trying to be their friend. That's what this is like.
Is because they've chosen not to engage with the grassroots anymore. They don't want these kinds of questions. I understand there's some people who have an approach or a tone that might seem off-putting to folks, but I don't think, I hope it comes across that what I want good outcomes for you and that I like you and that I am rooting for you, as Tyra Banks would say. But there are conditions to that. Do you know what I mean? And I think that the conditions that I'm expressing are conditions that a lot of folks on the left feel. And to the extent that the left is divided, they're also divided from these figures that they helped put into office because they don't want to answer for their Iron Dome votes. And they don't want, they have chosen to do what Nancy Pelosi says, which of course is going to get them criticism from the base. And so now they're alienated both from the Democratic Party establishment and from the base.
And I just want to add something in about that. If Amy wins, if she gets in, she's either going to have to go along with what Nancy Pelosi wants, what the Democratic Party wants, or they will find a way to get her out. And I'm going to be real. If Amy gets in, she's not going to be talking to us either. The same way Bree is telling you how members of the squad, like we canvassed for them, we voted for them, we donated money to them. A lot of people in left independent media gave them a platform when no one knew their name, and they will not talk to any one of us, let alone their constituents. Because talk to people in AOC's district and ask them how often they get to see and hear from AOC. And when Amy goes in, if Amy wins, Amy's going to be, it's the same thing. You think Nancy Pelosi is going to want Amy to talk to us? No. Just told you. Cori Bush's office is not allowed to talk.
Just trusting the base that got them elected, trusting the base that actually shares their values to say, what is Nancy Pelosi going to threaten me with? Cutting off my fundraising? AOC fundraises better than pretty much anyone in the Democratic Party. I will personally, the day that one of them comes out and says Nancy Pelosi threatened to not support me and give me an endorsement or to run an opponent against me, if I stood up for the people, they're immediately getting a recurring donation from me, right? Because screw Nancy Pelosi, right? I want that part. That's what a fighter looks like. Willingness to take the hit from the establishment and trust that if they do the trust fall into our arms, that the left community will buoy them, just like we are the ones that got them elected in the first place. It was independent media that put AOC on. It was Means TV that, socialist. Had
I not seen AOC on Jimmy Dore's show, I probably would have never heard of her until she won. Just being honest.
Maybe it wasn't Means TV. It was a socialist, democratic socialist outfit that did her first campaign video. It was Glenn Greenwald interviewing her at The Intercept, was one of her first big interviews. Jimmy Dore, was her first interview in lefty media. Like these are the people that they once trusted, and if some of them have turned against them, there is some responsibility that folks have to own, that it's because they had shut the door to the left to shield themselves against a certain kind of criticism. That they could have just come and rehabilitated themselves and apologized and worked through these issues as a community, and instead that they're walled off. I don't have any access to them. I think I'm a pretty nice gal, and none of them, except for God bless them, Ro Khanna, ever come on this show. Despite inquiries having been sent out. So I really do.
And they would never come on my show. They would never come. If they're not coming on Bree's show, what does that tell you? They wouldn't come on my show. They wouldn't come on RBN. We're pretty brutal. We can be pretty mean sometimes. So they definitely wouldn't come on our show. They're not coming on Bree's show. What does that tell you? We need a different strategy. This is not working. So tomorrow, join me on Call In afternoon show. I am going to be discussing a new strategy for progressives. I forget what I titled it, but anyway, it's scheduled on Call In, and we need to talk about strategy. And I want to hear from all of you because this is not working. And as long as the money is there, the corporate money, I don't see this ever working. Not this strategy. I think we need to get more independents. We need to get more third-party candidates. At this point, we need to take votes away from the Democratic Party. Let's stop having people go into this corrupt, decrepit party that continues to belittle them and shame them and tell them that you're going to have to be just like the rest of us or you're gone. Let's get rid of it. We need to talk about this because this is just it's not working. It's not working. And I want more people to address the money and talk about that is the core reason why We are not getting the tangibles that we need. That is the core reason why these politicians, whether in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, are not doing for the people, that they're serving corporations, they're serving donors. That's why we don't have universal health care in this country. That's why they won't cancel student loan debt. That's why they don't want to give everybody paid leave. This is the problem. It's the money. And so let's stop pointing fingers at its individual people. So yes, I criticize, Amy's responses, but at the end of the day, my problem is not with the individual candidates. My problem is the system that they are going into. It is designed for them to either give in to the establishment or for them to fail. Zach says, we don't need expert strategizing. We need those cowards to stick to their word, which they won't. Gamer says, running as a Dem is a losing strategy. She's Black. California Democratic Party has majority and they still refuse to pass Medicare for all. So the we need more progressive Dems talking point is BS. That's a perfect example. She's Black. Thank you so much for saying that, because that is a very recent example that we can point to say, look, California, look at what happened. It doesn't work. Money controls it all. Terry says, I'm changing to Green Party. I don't see Democrats doing anything for Black people. Don't even get me started on that issue, Terry. Don't even get me started on that. Like I said, for people who want advocating for reparations, I want to remind you the Green Party had reparations on their platform. Hitflix says all these progressives are trying to get that congressional retirement plan. I could see that as well. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. How are AOC and company going to fight when the progressive chair takes corporate money? Right? Thank you. And I know some people will come back and say, well, that's why we need Shahid Buttar in so Nancy Pelosi's gone. Do I think Shahid Buttar is better than Nancy Pelosi? 100%. Absolutely. Shahid's been on here multiple times. But I also want you to know when Shahid Buttar, if he replaces Nancy Pelosi, it's not like he's going to be speaker. Speaker is going to be a corporate Democrat. So you're still going to have the same problem.